Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about liabilities. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, when would you consider a software engineer a liability to the team? So I would say that a liability to the team is an individual who has issues that we can't solve readily through just having a dialogue about it. When you're dealing with an individual who has it's usually more deeply grained into into like their personality, or they have some issues which are so difficult for the team to deal with that they're probably going to be a permanent issue. Where we basically can't we can't make a short-term investment. And when I say a short-term investment, I basically mean just a few months or so. Like, it's not a big. It shouldn't be like an extended period of time that is required to solve this problem. If you can't solve it within that short time frame, then the person is a liability. If they're hindering like productivity and the overall happiness, these are usually the two main things. Like the big thing is of course uh, developer happiness, or like the team happiness, because that's a no-go in my book. There is and you basically can't keep such a person in an IT company. I've been in teams like that where like the developer was like had a really piss poor attitude, was really like borderline intimidating to some people and so forth, or like you could sort of hear that the way that they communicated wasn't really all that great, and the other developers did feel it. And it's a person where you can't talk and say, dude, you're gonna have to shape up here, because it's a fundamental part of their identity, or like it's the way that they behave with this in this environment. And it's not like they're a bad person, it's a matter of question of, have they reached a point where they might feel such frustration within the company or the team that it's simply like they're basically bitter at this point. Then yeah, you're not going to be able to talk away that. But if you, on the other hand, are dealing with people who are just having, like, the classic ones is that everybody has something about their work process where someone might not do their code reviews as quickly as you would like, or someone has a little bit trouble understanding certain concepts or asks for a lot of help, etc. So that these sort of milder quote unquote offenses that everybody does to a certain degree, everybody has something, isn't something that I would call a liability, because that's always the problem, right? Like, where do you draw the line? And for me, I usually draw the line, as I said, at issues that can't be fixed short term. And the reason isn't because I don't think that people long term can change like their behavior or step up like their game and so forth. But what it really comes down to in a business situation is, oh, okay, how much of an impact will this issue that this person is having go? How much is that going to affect the work that we do, and how much do we have to invest in order to fix this problem for this individual? Versus how much time would it take us, and investments would it take us to simply find someone else? It's really that equation, and that's sort of depicted many times, as you've probably seen, like the eccentric super genius who can be like a douche to everything and everybody around them because they're so smart, they're so great that you can't replace them, which is sort of like that's the horror scenario, right? You are dependent on this person, but they're causing tons and tons of issues. They're not actually going to comply with how things should be working and so forth. And unfortunately, in a situation like that, I usually don't think that there's much you can do, because the investment is simply too great. It's unlikely that companies are not really equipped. I would say most people are not equipped to keep someone like that causes these sorts of issues around for an extended period of time and fix like the fundamental issues with somebody's personality. And what I usually see when it comes to the personality problems, or like the inherit, like the big issues that makes a person a liability, is, as I said, number one, they have a bad attitude towards other people, or like they're not really social. They really don't promote an air of like really like they create tension if that in the team, if that makes sense. The second thing usually is that they have poor work ethics, where they're basically like inherently lazy to the point where everything they do, like they don't really try to step up for the team. They're not usually going to help their coworkers out. They prefer to just keep to themselves, like they lone wolf everything, and they don't want to deal with anybody, etc. like that. Such an individual you can't keep them around either. Like those sorts of people are basically there to like be like just to do their own thing, and that's not going to work in a team. And then the last one is usually that they're basically incompetent. And this is a big, like it's not, if it's a junior developer, it's not much of an issue. It really comes down to like sort of like what level can you put things on. But I can give you examples, guys, where I've been in teams where like I've been the team lead and I've had a developer who has more years of experience than I do, but can't ship the simplest thing. Like they literally have no way of doing anything. They can produce anything. And like they might not ask for help, etc., etc., and so forth. And such an individual can't be kept, like, because the reality is that at some point, which I've said to you guys before, like you really try to leverage your time as a junior, because there will come a time, and it's usually measured in years of experience, when people will go from saying that it's okay that you're still learning to that they are expecting you to produce things because you have had quote unquote so many years. It's sort of like growing up, and full like a person in their mid like a middle-aged person cannot get away usually socially with when acting like a teenager, because we expect you to at some point quote unquote grow up, and nobody really cares at the end of the day why you are not complying with like this box that we're trying to put you in, like, or sort of like these expectations. It's the same thing in our profession, where if you work for years and years and years and you don't take the time to really know your stuff and actually get good at the thing, nobody's going to apologize when they then like get rid of you, because you simply cannot meet the criteria. And for a junior, the criteria are usually low, but it's still like there is an expectation there somewhere. Like even if you're a junior software developer, something should be produced. How much? It's hard to say. It depends a little bit from company to company. And the more senior you get, the more that's going to be a very important part of the expectations on you. And if I deal with, which I have, people who are not able to improve or can't like ship the work, then I'm dealing with an incompetent person, and you have to get rid of them, because the fundamental problem is that since they can't carry their own weight, you have to carry them for them. You have to do the work on their behalf, which is unsustainable if you want to actually increase the overall effectiveness of the team. So what I want you to take away from this is that it's very rare that I would recommend like someone being dismissed, or if like I'm lucky in a sense, because it's only happened like once or twice I think in my career so far, maybe a few times I would say. But it's not something that happens like every day or like every month, luckily enough, with every person that I work with. And to me, like on the average, you should be a little bit, this is just my recommendation, try to work around and like talk to people about the quote-unquote issues that you might have that are fixable, like short-term problems, which are everything from people feeling more comfortable communicating or like just talking things out or so forth, because a lot of issues can be fixed with just communication and process improvements. But then there are, as I said, these sorts of fundamental problems with the individual themselves, which is something that has to do either with their personality or the way that they approach probably a lot of things in their life. And that is a very big investment to fix. It's likely something that they themselves are going to have to go and fix, or find a place of work where they simply don't give a shit. But in my teams, I usually report people who have either like a really bad attitude towards coworkers, or like create tension or things like that, friction, or people who have no work ethics or so forth, like they're not willing to play ball, they're never gonna like by themselves try to improve and actually help out on their own volition. They're just if you are not forcing them, they will not do it type of people. Never ever can't keep such a person around. And then lastly, people who are inherently incompetent. They are not cut out for working within the environment. And it's sometimes I'm working teams where the work is quote unquote more complicated, where like the requirements on you as a software developer is higher. And I might be able to say that, yeah, here we're doing sort of this and that, and they can't really do this and that, so we should probably move them to another team. Or in some cases, they're so hopeless that it's not possible to even recommend them to be moved to another team, and then we have to sort of get rid of them, unfortunately. Luckily, it's not that often that these sorts of things happen, but when it's take it from me, sooner or later, if you stay in this industry for long enough, you're going to start noticing these sorts of things. And the fundamental thing that you really have to understand if you want to be a tech lead or any type of leader is that the main goal for you is not to be everybody's friend. The ideal state for you is to create a team that works as well as possible given the circumstances that you have found yourself in. And in many cases, luckily, if you have the right skills yourself, you can talk to people and like make things a lot easier on people. But sometimes you have to remember that some people are not cut out for this environment, the environment that you are in. And in those sorts of situations, you can't dilly-dally with this. You can't, because it's like having an infection or something like that. If you just leave it alone, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And even though it sucks, sometimes you're going to have to say, unfortunately, this is not going to work out. Have a great day.